Welcome to the No Name Brand Podcast. My name is Sashka Hanarappel, actress, singer, dancer, turned brand marketing, sales, and advertising strategist who brands your soul. And each week I bring you an inspiring person or message to help you discover your undergod, turn up your leadership notches, challenge the status quo, because you're fast and furious with a powerful message to share with the world. Thank you for taking time out with me today, and without further ado, let's get our creative and wisdom juices flowing. What comes to mind when I mention the word shaman? Probably one of those Amazonian shamans doing all the dances and potions. Or from Africa, witch doctor. But what you wouldn't expect is a modern day shaman who doesn't do one of those dances and potions. Someone who not only focuses on untangling your emotional mess, but healing it too with humor, edge, and no bullshit potions. My guest today is one hell of a sassy lass. She's gorgeous, inside and out, and has one mean sense of humor, and she's a modern day shaman, healing your emotional hurts from the inside out. And one thing I've already learned from Sarah is that one doesn't become a shaman. You are one. Please help me in welcoming Sarah Ann Negus. Hello, Sarah.
Hello, Sashka. Wow. Goodness, that was one hell of an introduction. Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. None of that, coming from my side, no.
I might borrow it.
Pardon? You might borrow it.
Yeah.
No, not a problem. With pleasure. I'm going to dive right in. So you've had 5 car crashes. None of them were your fault, which consequently led you to Pilates classes, which you began teaching as well. And this helped you see that we hold a lot of blocked emotional content in our bodies, restricting our movements and daily tasks, which is probably why movement rehabilitation became a passion and the door into your work today. Now, when did you step into your destiny as a modern day shaman? And how have you combined your Pilates work, your coaching practice, and modern day shamanism to help your clients untangle the emotional strain that holds them back from achieving what it is they want to achieve?
Good question. And how long have you got, my dear?
Let me see the clock ticking.
Yes. So stepping into my destiny has been something that I've done little by little through my life. I'm sure that lots of people out there will resonate with that because it's never one big thing, particularly. There might be a catalyst. There certainly was with me, 5 car crashes. But slowly, I've got very comfortable with the fact that I am shaman. I am able to work energy, and I am able to help people to move through their own. If you could see me, I would be doing quotes, stuff that they've collected through their lives that isn't really very helpful to them in their growth. I think what the main thing was when I was working with people with my body in terms of movement and my hands. So I'm a very tactile person in that when I work with people physically, I hold them a lot. I move their bodies into different places. And if I feel restriction, then I will take my hands around it and hold it, because usually that sort of restriction isn't easily defined. But when you put your hands around it, then the person can feel it really differently. And I found that when I was doing this in the movement environment with the big machines, I use Pilates, the big Pilates machines, my clients were breaking down, crying. And initially I thought, oh my goodness me, what's this about? God, really, Sarah, have you got to make everyone cry? But then I found that crying was a release. And it was a door opening into what's going on inside them, in their inner world, not just in their physical body. The physical body was screaming at them to pay attention to what they weren't paying any attention to whatsoever inside themselves. And little by little, I got better at it. And little by little, I realized that my hands made such a difference. And that was how I began to integrate energy work work with a Pilates environment. Outside of working, I was already very deeply interested in living a spiritual life. I was already sitting in a circle where we would meet once or twice a week and go into shamanic journeying. I'd met my own spiritual teacher by then, and I was already one of her students. But it was when I first started working with her, I would say it was quite lightweight. I didn't really know where I was going with it. I just knew that it was a need in me. And as I got older and more confident and more people came towards me, I left the Pilates world a little bit behind me because it was only touching one aspect of a human being. You know, we're very much more than our physical bodies. Yeah. We're very much more than our thoughts, and we're very much more than our emotions. And I wanted to bring all of those things together in a way that encourages self-mastery. If we can master our own inner world, the things that go bump in the night in our minds, if we can master our reflexive responses to the outside world, we live in a much more contented, happy life, healthier life. Our body loves it. And then the final little, I suppose the icing on the cake was I was deciding that I was going to close my Pilates studio down because I wanted to focus on the energetic side of my work, the mentoring side of my work, the teaching side of my work. And I was delaying it. So I was thinking, I'll do that next month. I'll do that next month. You hold on to the good, don't you? Because you're afraid that nothing more is going to come. But what happened was that I was rushing early one morning to do my own self-care, to get myself to the gym. And I fell over spectacularly and smashed my elbow, which meant that I had to close my Pilates studio because with an elbow, they don't put you in a cast. So every single little vibration in your body goes through the break as it heals. It's quite debilitating and very painful. So it was done for me. Jeez. It's a saying I have, you know, don't teach me something, do it for me.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty much my thing.
Yeah, I've not got time. I'm doing my stuff. Do it for me.
Yeah.
So they did. My guides came in, they gave me a shove and they did it for me. And on that day, the very same day I came out of hospital, having had the x-rays and my lovely soft sling on my arm, to sign my first full high-end client who was going to work with me for a year. Oh. So in one day, I had the decks cleared and I'd been given complete validation that I was doing the right thing.
And here she stands. But now there's this myth around being a shaman. It's kind of like you're the chief of a village or something, or you're this higher being. What is the difference, or is there a difference, or where's the level of difference between Reiki, between energy healing, between shaman, clairvoyancy, or is shaman everything all in one?
That's a very good question, and it's not actually something that I've ever really thought about before. So I'm talking on my toes here.
Oh, cool.
Shaman for me is the ability to look at things and see things other people wouldn't. The ability to look into the darkness, but I'm using the word darkness because that's all I have in language. I don't necessarily associate darkness with anything scary or anything bad or anything that's going to hold me back. The darkness for me is the unknown, is the unconscious. And the unknown and the unconscious are where so many wonderful things are held. We've just not accepted them into our reality yet. I am clairvoyant, although I don't offer readings because I feel that is very disempowering for my clients. I would rather show them the way to find their own answers than to sit there and give them to them. From my own perspective, whoever we are, Reiki, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, psychic, people use intuitives, people use all sorts of different labels, shaman, everything that comes through us is always going to be coloured by our own filters. So someone asking me for a reading will mean that a little bit of my own life will go into how I explain that to them. And that's not empowering whatsoever. But for me to say, well, this is what I'm seeing. Come, let me show you. How does that feel for you? What does that mean for you? Can we track that back into this life, your childhood, your relationships? What does it mean in your body? Because this is what I'm seeing in energy. Can you feel that? Can you see it? It's very exciting for me because then the client is empowered to be themselves fully. They're not taking on anything everything from me. So shamanism, my modern day shamanism, comes from my soul. I was born to do this. Shamanism is an energy. It's a way of being that they being scientists, have tracked back in ethnological terms to at least 30,000 years ago. That's a long time.
That is a long time, yeah.
And even though it's all over the world, they find it in all sorts of different cultures. There is a common theme that runs through it. That is that you have the energy world, you have our world, you have the world of the persons in terms of their potential. And the shaman is able to travel within these places to bring all of them closer together. So in looking in the darkness, you bring the light, the potential, closer. You know, I like to think about, as people ask me often, who inspires you? And having watched Matthew McConaughey talk about his future self, I really resonated with that. So my future self inspires me because I'm not there yet, and I know the best is yet to come. So what would your future self want from you? And what have we got to do to get you there quicker? This is my modern day shaman.
So I'm going to put it in Sashka language.
Please.
And tell me if it's right. So I see it as, with Brand Sashka, it's full service branding, marketing, advertising, sales. So it's everything. It's a holistic view for creating your business, your brand, your personal life, and putting it all together. Is that shamanism? Because shamanism takes everything. So it takes life coaching, transformational coaching, clairvoyancy, reading, psychic. It takes energy work, and it puts it all together. You're kind of like the full service when we come to you.
It's the modern day shamanism. Yes.
Without
Absolutely.
the potions.
Without the potions. I have myself experienced potions in my training.
Cool.
I'm not dissing them.
No. That would probably like scare me. Oh my God.
Yeah. And I have too experienced drumming and shamanic rattles and the chanting and everything. I've done sweat lodges. But in our modern Western world, it doesn't quite fit. Not for me anyway. Yeah. And I want to bring it into a way that's accessible for everybody because I feel it has a massive place. Our Western world initiates us time after time after time in all of the things that come up and challenge us. And it's very difficult to find a holistic way that deals with mind, body and soul to help you move through that. And this is what I offer.
Is the training for shamanism or for a modern day shaman the same as a traditional shaman?
No. The training for modern day shamanism is uniquely offered from me in that it is 12 months worth of everything I know. Traditional shamanism will teach you traditional methods and the traditional way of looking at the world. And I do include that all in my training. For instance, in terms of dimensions, traditional shamanism looks at the lower world, which is the past, the middle world, which is our now, and the upper world, which is the spiritual realms and our future. Whereas I believe that there are 12 dimensions. You hear lots of people talking about we're living in a 3D world.
Yeah, five dimensions.
There's 12 dimensions, and our universe, our realities collapse down on each other, and our universe is not just on its own. Cato, who's a wonderful quantum physicist, has actually given us a string theory, which is proving that we have parallel universes all the time.
Wow.
I particularly love him because he's also just gone public with the fact that he has a mathematical equation now that proves that the universe was created by an intelligent force. So he doesn't call it God, neither would I, but it is consciousness. And this is where I work, in amongst all of these places.
This is fascinating. So what is your starting point when you're working on this holistic service agency?
I always go back. So my understanding of working with people, and certainly with my own self, is that I find can't go forward fully unless you understand where you've been.
Yeah.
And in going back, but the first part is I always ask my lovely newbies, my new clients, to write me a biography and then to tell it to me. It's not very often that we sit down without breaking, for a cup of tea or coffee or see you tomorrow, and tell our own unique story to somebody. And in that telling, there is a lot of release and a lot of aha moments and a lot of remembering. And it gives me a really good framework and outline from which to work into my client's energy. I can see the gaps, I can see the torsions, I can see the hidden gems. And from there we move forwards.
I love that. Oh, what do you think are the biggest myths about A, being a shaman, and B, combining shamanism and emotional intelligence in coaching and sports together?
So let's start off with the myths, shall we? There is a lot of stigma around shamanism. And I have to say, I had that myself. I didn't want to.
Wow, really?
No, God, don't call me a shaman. No, I'm intuitive, darling. But I'm not. Well, I am, but shaman runs through my blood. When you see me in archetype, if you see me in energy, there's no question about it. I'm in touch with our earth. I'm in touch with the higher realms. I'm in touch with you and everybody. Because it's such an ancient tradition, an ancient way of being, when our modern day patriarchal society started to invade the world, it was this people had power. They were deemed to be dangerous. And because they looked in the darkness, they were really scary people. So it does depend how you use energies. It depends how you use anything for good or for your own ends. But the stigma around it comes from our patriarchal society, that shamanism is something that isn't quite comfortable, that doesn't fit in with the light. But there's duality in everything. In the light, there's darkness always. And you can't see it. You can't see the light unless you've got darkness there. So the myths around it, I think, have been ingrained in our culture for thousands of years. But my role, I feel, is to shift that and change that. Traditional shamans still exist and look after their communities in the indigenous population all the way around the world. They help hold ancient information that we've all forgotten. Coming across them and learning from them, for me, was a real privilege in that I remembered lots of things. And I felt, when I went to Peru, I felt like I'd gone home. Not to the place, but to myself. And everything that I was afraid of around shamanism was really what I was afraid of in me. So that's when I started to use the word and be comfortable with it and go, yeah. And there's so many people that I come across, you, my darling, Sashka, are working through that energy. And as you said, Branch Sashka is a holistic experience, and it is a parallel universe, if you like, of my modern day shamanism, just in another way.
Yeah, that is so true.
And now I've got tied up with my myths here, and I've forgotten the second part of the question.
It was about the myths about combining shamanism and things like emotional intelligence and life coaching and sports. And is it absolutely possible, or it's so taboo?
It is absolutely possible. I like the way that you've used sports, because I have had members of our Olympic team come to see me when they lose their confidence.
Oh, wow.
And I go with them into their energy. We look at, usually it's the women that have come to me. Usually it's something to do with their evolution from girl to womanhood. And we work on that and being good enough, knowing that success is in every single moment of every try they make is success for them, because it's a way to look at how they could do it better. They master that emotion that was telling them that they were a failure. This is, for me, bringing self-mastery, self-confidence, life coaching, all together in one thing. Emotional intelligence is very high up in what is important to me, anybody really, in myself and the people that I surround myself with. And it helps living day to day to be in the best version that you can be. If you collapse back into your little child and throw your toys out of the pram every time something doesn't go your way, you're still stuck very much in that 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old emotional being. It's not helpful. Why are you stuck there? Let's look at that. Let's go down into the energy. Let's see what she needs. Can you mother yourself at all? Usually people don't know how to be their own mother. They're looking for outside influences to come in and hold them and show them that they are worth something. I think that's so sad. And it doesn't have to be that way.
I was just thinking about when you were talking about the mother, and I was thinking about my mom and her heavy side now. And then I was thinking about the light side. And then I was thinking, Sarah should tell us a little bit about her light side, her humor side, the opposite of the, in quotes, if you can see me, the serious side of the shaman and the emotional intelligence coach. And like, where you're a good girl, where you're a naughty girl, how has it sparked your personality?
When I'm teaching, I'm a South London girl. I come from Croydon, and if you know anything about London and the UK, Croydon is as a suburb in south of the river. And when I was growing up in the 70s, it was the biggest booming area in London. It's not now. But there's an edge to South London in that I tell it like it is. And I can be really straightforward, and I am good at laughing at myself and laughing with my clients, as whatever comes up. Laughter is it's very, very, very healing. And if you could see Sashka, well, you can't now because it's audio, but if you could see her eyes are sparkling, and I know mine are too. And this is what happens, is that in the connection with people, my light shines. And I've never been a naughty girl. I've always, occasionally, but I can't tell you about that. I've always been the good girl. My sister was the naughty one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And she's younger than me. And I was just petrified of my mother. Rachel wasn't. So I've always wanted to be head of the class. I'm a Virgo.
I made everyone laugh. That was my thing. I just made you laugh. I felt valid in making everyone laugh. I thought that was cool. I still enjoy it. It was suppressed for a very long time because of the culture where I am now, but it's starting to come up again. And then I noticed it, I'm going, I know now why it was suppressed. And it was just because in South Africa it was funny. And when I told jokes, they wouldn't get it. And I thought,
don't laugh at that. Yeah.
No, so they didn't laugh. So I was like, oh, well, I'm not funny. And subconsciously I told myself I'm not funny, and then I left it. But now I'm like, nah.
Nah. You're funny. It's them that's not.
Why am I? So what excites you every day to get up and work with your soul clients? What pisses the daylights out of you?
Gosh, put me on the spot again.
Oh, so sorry.
What inspires me?
Why do you do what you do?
Why do I do what I do? Because if I don't do what I do, I get what's called shamanistic sickness.
Ooh.
In that the energy that moves inside me turns in on myself.
Oh, God.
So I'm inspired to keep that energy moving because there's flow in it and it's not just for me.
Ooh,
and the more people that I touch, I can actually see what happens and I'm looking now into the energy, when I am able to show someone themselves and make a difference, or they make a difference for themselves. I can see that going out.
Wow.
And we can't change the world, but we can change ourselves. And one person at a time, it's got to be the way. This inspires me.
I love that. And what pisses you off in your daily work?
What pisses me off in my daily work? Technology.
That was really loud. Sorry.
No, you're right. It does. Technology.
Oh, bless. Mine would be complacency. People, they just get complacent. I'm like, Shaman, wake up.
Yeah.
Thank goodness we have virtual assistants and online business managers. That makes a world of difference.
Doesn't it?
So I have heard that you are one hell of a manifester. Is it just because you're a shaman and you have special powers? No. Or because you've taught yourself this?
I've taught myself this.
Oh, I love it. And what, how, who, when? So there's hope for us people. We can all manifest.
So the first time I realised what I was doing was when I actually came and bought the house that I'm living in now. In that I'd spent 7 years I moved 9 times in 7 years after I left my marriage, because I was going from rented to rented, and sometimes the people would sell their house anyway. And I finally got to the position where I was able to go and buy a home for me and my son that I knew was going to be stable. And again, when I was married, we had a property company. We built very gorgeous, bespoke properties. So I was coming from a place of living in opulence in the country in 4 acres, and I was coming from a place where I was looking for something a whole lot smaller. And I couldn't find anywhere. I kept looking everywhere. I can't see myself living there, and I can't see myself living there, and I can't see myself living there. So what I did was I started to write down all of the things that I needed in my home, how it was going to make me feel and what it was going to look like. And then I struck up a relationship with the estate agent. Obviously, he wanted to be my friend because he knew I had money in my hot, sticky hand and I was ready to spend it. So he started to drive me around places, and I'd given up. We'd spent 3 days, a whole long weekend, and I'd given up. I was like, no. Ugh. And in that giving up and letting go of I'm not going to find it, he then drove me up this little unmade drive, and I went, oh, where are we? This is nice. And he said, it isn't it? And I went, how much is it? And he went and made a face at me. It was £100,000 more than I had. And I went, I can't do that. And he went, let's go and talk to them. Come on, trust me. So I did. So we went in and we talked to the people, and I loved their house, and I told them that I loved it, and I told them how much I had, and they said, deal.
Oh my God.
And within 3 months, I'd moved in.
Wow.
And that's the process that I use.
Just asking. Just ask.
Being clear. Doing the groundwork.
Yep.
Getting over my mind chatter, and then letting go. Because nothing ever comes in the way that we expect it.
Damn straight. Preach it, sister. Preach it.
Really doesn't.
Oh, good. Oh, Sarah, we're coming to the end of our wonderful time on the podcast. And at the end, I always ask 2 questions to all my guests. And it's my 3 core values and your interpretation of it. Fill in the blank. Creativity for you is?
A must.
Cool. Passion for you is?
My life.
Nice. Wisdom for you is?
Innate.
And you kind of touched on this earlier, but how do you want to change the world or challenge the world doing what you do?
Good question. Gosh, you're really good at putting me on the spot and pulling things out of me, aren't you? Okay, so our world is in crises. The Western world sits and looks in feeling better than everywhere else, yet supplies arms, goes in and steals resources. And if we all understood that we are enough ourselves, if we all understood that we are somebody's child, if we all understood that we are so deeply connected to each other, and if we understood that this planet is our home and our mother, I believe the world would change. There would not be so much destruction. That's not to say there wouldn't be challenge. Of course there would be, but challenge is how we grow. There wouldn't be so much misery because we would love ourselves. And in loving ourselves, we would love one another, no matter who they were and without judgment. And that for me, I doubt if I'll see it in my lifetime or my son will see it in his lifetime. But that for me would be nirvana.
That'd be amazing. That's really heaven.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sarah, thank you so much for being with us here.
Thank you for having me. Me too.
I could talk forever. We'll do it again. Definitely do it again. Bring it on in 6 months, people. Yes. And you'll be finding more information about Sarah in the show notes, her favorite book, her favorite quote, a few tweetables to put out there, and a freebie and a link to her social media handles where you can find her and book a session with her and get to meet her and know her, join her Facebook group. Thank you so much for being with us, Sarah, and have an awesome, awesome day further.
Thank you, Sashka. You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Dang, that was just supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. I enjoyed having you on board, and please do me and you a favor. Head on over to iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. Click subscribe, and a super bonus, leave your review and you stand a chance of being announced and advertised on the show. I'm always striving to ensure that your brand is uplifted and empowered. Remember, done is better than perfect. So be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and send in your feedback too. You're the absolute best. Keep rocking.